Hi, I'm Jon Atack.
I'm Ursula,
and this is Lyrical Wax. And today our theme is autumn, and a little bit late possibly, but we've just experienced it. And we have quite a variety of pieces, including a poem each by Ursula and one by me. So we're going to start with Ursula.
Yeah. So this is a poem written by me called The Waiting Season. My thoughts are full of dry caves, burrows, holes in trees, as an English Midlands winter sinks into its wet grey nothingness. My menagerie character is dormant now, reduced to necessities. Anything superfluous discarded like the year's leaves. In a confusing mufflement, I feel I am a squirrel being cuddled by a bear, being also the bear. I slip peacefully under my duvet. Life curls up its layers around me. Everything is simplified. I begin my season lived by the flickering light of a box set. For 10 months of any 12, I have a puppy curiosity that scampers ahead, truffles behind, and rarely comes when called. It's snoozing like an old mutt now, feeling the damp in the joints of its questions. A stray query dodders around. At lower latitudes, Cairo, Lima, Saigon, does this human hibernation read like mental illness? Who knows? I'm here at latitude 50-something, and it's winter. Any draw towards conclusions is just out of reach. I can see it though, over there, where it's spring.
My mum used to quote this poem. This is
Oh yes,
from John Keats, remarkable poet of the early 19th century. And he lived to be 25 years old, and at the end of his life, one of the last things he said was that he'd achieved nothing. And yet here we are, all these years later, still reciting his poetry. This poem is called To Autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd, and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more, and still more, later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers, and sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then, in a wailful choir, the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft, or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.
Really, that's a classic evocation of autumn in a temperate climate, isn't it?
It is indeed.
And it's lovely because in some ways, when I first came across it at school, and lots of people have, let's face it. I liked some of it, and then some of it, it kind of goes on and on a bit, all right. But actually just letting those images just wash over you, and just having those sort of one image after another of different things, and very much in a temperate climate. It is, it's not a description of lots of parts of the world, but certainly where we live, it's very recognisable, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, and it's the absolute classic. This is a very different one. We've wanted to have sort of a real variety of approaches to any theme that we choose, and certainly with autumn, there's so many poems written about it. We could have had 12 poems about leaves, and autumn leaves are well worth writing about, and we will come across them later more than once. But there's other things going on in autumn as well. This one is called The New Term. It's by Carolyn Oulton. So the new term, the new school year, starting in autumn. I suppose it would have been dusk, the car they were getting back into facing in the wrong direction. The girl with her arm wrapped round me like a ribbon, a comfort to my parents at least. When she leaned in close and smiled to tell me what would happen once they'd left. She'd got it wrong for once. She didn't know that trees were places to read letters, hide invisible friends in, but the forest, as per the book, was indeed my kingdom. She said they'd make me climb the tallest pine and leave me there all night. It must have been one in the eye for her when I agreed.
Okay, this is Attilio Bertolucci, whose dates are 1911 to 2000, and I'd never heard of him before.
I really enjoy him.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing him to the table. I have heard of the film director called Bertolucci, but it's not the same
Different
bloke.
person.
What can I say? This is called The Years. The mornings of our lost years, the tables in the sunny autumn shade, the friends who went and then returned, the friends who will never return again. I thought of them with joy, because this September day is shining so beguilingly into windows of shops in hours like those of then, are gliding by at a peaceful tempo now. The crowd is the same on golden pavements, only the grey and lilac are changed by fashion into green and red. The pace is slow and easy, that of the provinces.
I like that sort of that evocation of September and autumn, and because there's so much sort of wistfulness and memory that seems to be evoked by autumn, but that's not remotely downbeat. It's a pleasurable, letting some memories kind of come and go, and they're really pleasurable, and it's not about it's all ending now.
Yeah, and it's a celebration of what has been rather than mourning for what is lost.
Absolutely. Something very different again. This is the lyrics from a song by the White Stripes called Little Acorns. And it's divided into two bits. So the first bit is could be spoken by a TV preacher or somebody like that. And then there's the other part as well.
A televangelist, a TV preacher.
Right, okay. Little Acorns. When problems overwhelm us and sadness smothers us, where do we find the will and the courage to continue? Well, the answer may come in the caring voice of a friend, a chance encounter with a book, or from a personal faith. For Janet, help came from her faith, but it also came from a squirrel. Shortly after her divorce, Janet lost her father, then she lost her job. She had mounting money problems. But Janet not only survived, she worked her way out of despondency, and now she says life is good again. How could this happen? She told me that late one autumn day, when she was at her lowest, she watched a squirrel storing up nuts for the winter. One at a time he would take them to the nest. And she thought, if that squirrel can take care of himself with a harsh winter coming on, so can I. Once I broke my problems into small pieces, I was able to carry them, just like those acorns, one at a time. Take all your problems and rip them apart. Carry them off in a shopping cart. Another thing you should have known from the start, the problems in hand are lighter than at heart. Be like the squirrel, girl. Be like the squirrel. Give it a whirl, girl. Be like the squirrel. And another thing you have to know in this world, cut up your hair, straighten your curls, while your problems hide in your curls. So that's a very different approach to autumny things, acorns and squirrels. What I really like about that, there's one line that I think is clever. So it's all kind of about, that sensible thing. You break down your problems into small things. Very valid. There's a place for that without a doubt. But that line, another thing you should have known from the start, the problems in hand are lighter than at heart. So you can do that, but there are some things, how do you break down that problem of huge, overwhelming emotions sometimes? And also, I quite like the issue at the end, straightening your curls. Your problems hide in your curls, so you should straighten them. And to me, there's a real, you can look at it both ways, that either this is some bizarre solution to a problem, but also, actually, does anybody want, speaking as somebody with rather unruly hair, does anybody want to straighten their curls if they have curls? So actually, maybe this is taking a rather cynical look at this approach of breaking things down. Oh, you've got to make everything nice and straight and neat, and then you won't have any problems. And I think there's a bit of cynicism in there.
There's also a possible side reference about straightening curls, which refers to the black population of the US and the long period through which black people were actually ironing their hair to straighten out their problems. And as you say, it does get a little extreme at that point.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Absolutely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And what was the line about heart?
The problems in hand are lighter than at heart.
Because that seems to me that when you face problems, it's often easier to resolve them when you get down to it than all of the worrying you've done and all of the amplification of the problem. That's certainly where I live my life. Wonderful. This is a poem called New Fruit by Anne Drysdale. It's from a little collection called 10 Poems About Gardens.
Published by Candlestick Press. Candlestick Press do a lot of, they're a local to us. They do a lot of booklets like this, 10 poems on a particular theme. Yeah, they're great.
And New Fruit, Anne Drysdale. In the last knockings of the evening sun, Eve drinks Calvados. Elsewhere in her life, she has played muse and mistress, bitch and wife. Now all that gunpoint gamesmanship is done. She loves the garden at this time of day. Raising her third glass up to God, she grins. If this is her comeuppance for her sins, it's worth a little angst along the way. A fourth, again the cork's slow, squeaky kiss. If, as the liquor tempts her to believe, the Lord has one more Adam up his sleeve, he's going to have to take her as she is, out in the garden in a dressing gown, breathing old apples as the sun goes down. That's beautiful. I love the cork's slow, squeaky kiss.
Yeah.
And the reference, of course, Calvados is an apple brandy, so the reference to Adam is contained in that.
Yeah, yeah. This next one is my favourite poem by not my favourite poem, full stop. I'll start that again.
My favourite poem, semicolon.
Yeah.
My favourite poem.
Exclamation mark.
Yes.
This next poem is my favourite poem of Sylvia Plath's poetry. I think it's wonderful, and it fits here because it's about mushrooms. Mushrooms. Overnight, very whitely, discreetly, very quietly, our toes, our noses take hold on the loam, acquire the air. Nobody sees us, stops us, betrays us. The small grains make room. Soft fists insist on heaving the needles, the leafy bedding, even the paving. Our hammers, our rams, earless and eyeless, perfectly voiceless, widen the crannies, shoulder through holes. We diet on water, on crumbs of shadow, bland-mannered, asking little or nothing. So many of us, so many of us. We are shelves, we are tables, we are meek, we are edible. Nudgers and shovers in spite of ourselves. Our kind multiplies. We shall by morning inherit the earth. Our foot's in the door. I just love that. It covers everything about mushrooms. What is there that she leaves unsaid about mushrooms?
And bearing in mind that the largest living organism in the world is, in fact, a fungus, honey fungus, which crosses 3 states in the US, a single living entity. So,
but also, I mean,
there's no stopping them.
There's no stopping them, and there's more fungi than anything else in the world. And
I think bacteria do pretty well, actually. But
I think that who'd win in a fight? Who'd win in one of those contests?
Let's put that on. We'll do our next show. Will be a battle between.
Are there more fungi in the world or bacteria? Who's right?
What do you think, Sam? More fungi or more bacteria?
Species or mass?
Yeah.
I think it's bacteria.
Yeah. I think
Okay,
so,
right. I'm outnumbered at the moment. That's okay.
It's a democratic scientific truth there, 2-1.
Where's the cat? What does the cat think?
I think Lucy's asleep, actually. She couldn't care less.
But so the bit about that's really remarkable about mushroom, one of the really remarkable about things is that strength they have, that they can actually lift paving stones just by growing, and yet there is that there meek, bland-mannered, I think is a great description.
And we know them only from their fruit. We know them only from the mushrooms rather than the mycelium, which is the actual organism creeping about. Yeah. And it can be all the way under your garden, a single mycelium, popping up little fruits here and there, which are the mushrooms, with their little spores. And it's a quite separate form of life from bacteria. And thus they're now actually suggesting that viruses might be alive. This is a new thought.
But yes, they are. It's not animal, vegetable or mineral.
No,
fungi is a kingdom of its own. Yeah.
And then the archaea, of course, but we don't talk about them.
Over to you, John, for the next poem.
This is quite short. Samuel Menashe lived from 1925 to 2011 in New York, it says in your note.
Yes. Yeah.
So good for him. It's called The Bare Tree. My mother once said to me, when one sees the tree in leaf, one thinks the beauty of the tree is in its leaves, and then one sees the bare tree.
I love that.
Succinct.
Yeah.
Or succinct, as some people say. There you go. You get the choice there.
He wrote a lot of. He's a really interesting person, Samuel Menashe. Look him up. So, Russian Jewish immigrant to America. Where then he did a PhD at the Sorbonne. So he wrote a PhD in French.
As we all do, of course.
Yeah. And wrote a lot of poetry. A lot of it's very short. And was, I think it was 2004, he was sort of given an award of neglected masters of poetry, which I like. And his
I'm up for one of
PhD
those,
was on
definitely.
the poetic experience.
Yeah, but in
So-
French.
But in
You
French,
need to
so
read
not
it.
accessible to everybody. But yeah, I think he's a really interesting character.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm sitting back as though you're going to read one, but no, it's over to me.
No, back to work for you.
Yeah. So this is a poem called Allhallows. So Allhallows is the day after Halloween.
Verburgisnacht.
Yeah, so I think, is it called Halloween in most Anglophone places? This is the 1st of November anyway, the day
But-
after the 31st of October.
All Saints' Day, All Hallows.
Yeah,
And so the evening before is
yeah, I was just wondering what the Halloween...
Hallows E'en.
I
which is-
understand.
yeah.
I was just
That's what
wondering...
I'm saying probably in most European languages, because it's a Christian festival. It is something of that type, All Saints' Day, and the evening before, which is when all the bad things and evil things come out for the last time before the saints come and go marching in and drive them away.
So this poem is by an English poet called Jacob Polley, who I really like. I only discovered him about a year ago, saw him doing a performance. Absolutely remarkable performer. Very hard to describe, but remarkable. And he writes very often about life in the rural part of England where he's from. And so this is called Allhallows, and it's about local life. Morning breaks like an egg or a promise, and the gulls fall about laughing. The skulls you lugged home from the farmer's oddest field are candle cooked, as if one black thought had burnt itself out, and the sheets are back on the beds, their eye sockets sewn up. The masks lie knocked off, so return your warts to the cereal box and observe the single brown bite in the apple still nodding in the washing up bowl. You've held a torch beneath your chin, and your face has stuttered through your hidden selves on its cylinder of bone. Now you're wondering which look you slept on, which you woke with, or if your face has come to rest between two looks, on emptiness.
I was a bit confused by returning the warts to the cereal bowl
Cereal box.
box.
So
Why would we be doing that? And why were they in there in the first place?
What?
using little bits like Rice Krispies or something
Oh,
for
okay.
warts to go out trick or treating, just so which surely we've all done that.
Never been trick or treating, actually. There you go.
Wow.
Strange
Missed
American
out.
habits, as far as I'm concerned.
Now a Northern Irish friend of mine says that it's Northern Irish, then it went over to the States and then came back. So actually it's not just it's travelled around more than that.
Yep,
Started
fair
in
enough.
Britain.
Yeah. So, because with us, of course, it conflicts with our celebration of the failure to kill the king on November the 5th, 1605. So our festival tends to be bonfire night at that time, and the American Halloween came back in. But as you say, its origins in Northern Ireland, where
Well,
you'd have thought they'd have been a lot more concerned about the killing of a king who had only recently. But there you go.
there you go.
Yeah.
I've only got one friend to base it on.
Yep, well, that's good enough. What are friends for? This is a poem by Emily Bronte, one of the astonishingly influential and fascinating members of the Bronte family, who had a tremendous influence on literature, both as novelists and as poets. And the poem is called Fall Leaves Fall. Fall leaves fall, die flowers away, lengthen night and shorten day. Every leaf speaks bliss to me, fluttering from the autumn tree. I shall smile when wreaths of snow blossom where the rose should grow. I shall sing when night's decay ushers in a drearier day.
I like the fact that she's clearly enjoying autumn and looking forward to winter, Yes.
Yeah, and she's going to sing anyway.
Yeah,
Good for her.
She's not bothered about waiting for spring or mourning it. Wow.
Why should we be? Especially those of us who have central heating. And don't have to work
Don't
outdoors.
imagine the Brontes did. That would be quite remarkable, wouldn't it? I'm just
Oh, you need the book back, don't you?
motioning for a book to
Give
be
us the
handed
book,
over
give
to
us
me.
the book.
Having to share a book. This is how cheap this all is. We have to do.
No expense spared.
This poem is called Out in the Garden. It's by Katharine Mansfield, who was more famous for her short stories, really, than her poetry.
So we got a New Zealander in. And let's point out that Katharine Mansfield changed her name from Kathleen to Katharine.
Oh, right, okay.
But I consider her one of the great story writers.
She's
Phenomenal.
fantastic, isn't she? But anyway, I'm going to read one of her poems.
Virginia Woolf said she smelled like a civet cat. Hey, she puts on too much perfume, and I'm a bit snobby about that. Bless them.
Out in the garden. Out in the garden, out in the windy swinging dark, under the trees and over the flower beds, over the grass and under the hedge border, someone is sweeping, sweeping, some old gardener. Out in the windy swinging dark, someone is secretly putting in order. Someone is creeping, creeping. I like that.
I do too. As a young man, and I was once a young man, I had the great good fortune to know a painter called William Gere, who had paintings in, I think he told me, 25 national collections around the world. So he was quite well known. But he was known for a period in the late 40s. And his first question to me when we first met was, did I paint according to the seasons? And he was very pleased when I said, yes, I do. And he said, and do you garden? And I said, yes, I do. So we became fast friends. And he had 4 palettes. You know, I've never regimented it down to that. But it is true that in the autumn you start thinking about colour in a different way. And as a painter, it's really the most exciting time of the year.
So the link between painting and gardening was that he had a different palette for each season.
And he would observe it from his own garden by going out there and seeing this. And he made wonderful paintings. Yeah. But they're, you know, the spring colours, the fresh greens and blues and violets, and then the summer, which settles down into the centre of the spectrum, and then the red, you know, the crimsons, the colours we're going to hear about here.
I think we're going to hear,
if we're lucky, and then, you know, the more grey, black and white winter palette. He's a lovely bloke. So knowing that we were going to do this and realising I might have to trawl through the thousands of poems I've written to try and find something, I thought, well, the best thing to do is to write something. So this was written on the 5th of November, which is, 3 days ago or something, 2 days ago, just to cram it in there. To have something to say. Summer green burnishes to gold, takes our breath, with magentas and purples, crimsons and sunset oranges, the bright exhilaration of life fulfilled, spindle, linden, maple and plum, each blush their finale, to welcome winter's sleep, await rebirth. There we go. And we've somehow managed to come to the end. And you were going to mention a bonus episode, which was about a poem that we didn't, in fact, read during.
Indeed, yes, that's right. So there will be a bonus episode linked to this, which will be me reading something in French. So the very famous song Autumn Leaves came to my mind when we were sort of putting together things for this. And I was thinking, oh, we could have that. And actually, yeah, it's nice, but we've got quite a lot of fairly similar things. But because it's been translated from the French, I thought, well, let's have just the French. There'll be a bonus episode linked to this, which will be me reading a French poem, the lyrics to a French song by Jacques Prévert called Les Feuilles Mortes, which is a beautiful song and was translated into English and became very famous in the English-speaking world as Autumn Leaves, covered by so many people. It's kind of part of the Great Songbook now. And interesting thing about translating from one language to another, if it's poetry or song and there's things that rhyme and scan, is that you can't necessarily have a direct translation because the syllables of words in another language may not fit the tune. So the words in English are quite different, and I think they're rather nice, but I felt like we'd kind of covered the concept of Autumn Leaves in what we wanted to do anyway. But I will be reading the original French version of this song Les Feuilles Mortes in a bonus episode. So that would be great if you should check that out as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that title means the dead leaves.
The dead leaves, yes.
Slightly different inference. Well, I'm Jon Atack. This has been Lyrical Wax. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your time. I'm Ursula Wake. Goodbye.